Alrighty guys, I'm doing the tour today. It's Blair. So downtown Cobalt, the Mining Museum. Just waiting for the last group to come back. Now we're out of here, so go see what some underground mines look like around here, because we have no idea. And we're there. Blue is my color. Alrighty guys, so we're about to go in the underground tour. So here's our guide today.
Hi, my name's Ella and this is the Colonial Island. I work at the Cobalt Mining Museum if you guys want to come in any day of the week. This is one of our oldest mines here, opened in 1907. The town was founded in 1903, so it's pretty old. Yeah, super excited to have you guys here today.
Pretty good crew of people.
Alright, so we are up
See how this goes.
Colonial mine. This mine first opened in 1907. It ran for a good 30 years before closing in 1937. Over that time it produced 1.25 million ounces of silver. There's quite a good chunk of money out of here. Eagle, they bought this property in the 60s. They sunk the shaft down to 1,200 feet in search of more silver. They didn't find a whole lot more, so they closed up the shop soon after that. And it's been closed up ever since. This mine has 12 levels to it and about 25 kilometers worth of tunnels between all of the 12 levels. So it's a bit on the larger side, not quite the biggest mine of cobalt, but it's up there. And it's quite cool, and so now we can make our way in.
Just me and Blair left now.
Okay, I'll take a look and see.
Can't see much of anything.
It's okay, you got my hand. They're trying to scare us.
I don't know if I seen you, but a little bit.
So the way that the miners decided to actually start a mine, where they would actually put down their drills and start going into the earth, there was a couple of things they would look for, aside from the silver itself, that would sort of tell them that they were going in the right direction. There's a couple of minerals they would look for. One of them is calcite, which is this white looking stuff you can see on the wall here. So it occurs nearby to silver in this area, so if you started seeing some calcite, generally it was a pretty good sign that you were getting close to silver, and that place where you were finding this calcite could be a good place to start a mine.
So prospectors, more often than not, if they found a wall with calcite, which is what we think happened here, because if you saw when we entered, it was just one wall face of rock. Most likely there was a huge calcite vein right there, indicating that there was most likely to be silver in here, and there was a whole lot of silver.
And another one of the minerals that they would use is actually cobalt, and it's a little harder to see, but there's a little bit over here, the pinkish. There's not too much here, but there's a good little bit here you can kind of see. You can come a little closer to get a little bit look.
So this pink stuff up here, it's also known as erythrite. We have a couple of samples of it at the museum as well. But you can see that it is in combination with the calcite, which is what this white stuff is as well. Calcite and erythrite together indicates a very, very likely chance there's going to be silver in this rock deposited here. So they're both indicators of silver.
It's kind of interesting.
Cross section. So up on the top you've got your refineries and you've got your head frames. And as you start to go underground, these are called, the vertical is called the shaft, and the horizontals are called drifts. An entrance that we came through is called an adit, which is just a surface level drift. And as you go down, you see there's this stope, which is this big cavern looking place here, and that is actually where most of the silver is extracted from. When they find a big vein of silver, they prefer to do stopes, which are the big caverns above themselves, to extract the silver. It's just a little easier for them that way.
They're utilizing gravity in that way, that they don't have to dig up the ore so much from the ground, or like after an explosion, they would just let the rocks fall down and into their cars and things like that. So there would have been like cars down here, and they would come here, and then they'd be lifted up with the head frame there.
Yeah, and some mines, though not all of them, would have exit raises as well, which are just sort of emergency exits for a mine. While the main shaft would have the winch and system with the head frame, the exit raises were usually just a ladder or a rope.
Could you imagine climbing that entire ladder? Oh my goodness, I wouldn't want to do that.
I sure could. That's what the helmet is for, I guess. Blair's the only one with a light besides the tour people.
Alright.
I know.
So, this is our drill room. So, this configuration here, this is called a drift round. Now what this is, the pattern that the miners would have used to drill the holes in the wall to then make blasts. So this entire bore here consists of what one blast configuration would have looked like. So the central blast is obviously the most concentrated blast. That's to get the ball rolling. And then they have the helpers along the sides, along the bottom here. And then they'd have the easers, the back holes, and then finally the lifters. The lifters are actually the most important of each of these types of blasts, because after everything has collapsed from the ceiling and off the sides of the walls, the lifters would break up all that rubble that had fallen off the ceiling and off the walls, making it much easier for the miners to then shovel it into ore cars, because that's what they had to do. So, to make this drift round, from about 1903 until about 1910, they would use something called a hand steel. This is a hand steel. Hand steels actually in the original mines, they would have been 6 feet long. This is just an example. But these hand steels, they would have been placed on a surface of the rock. And one other guy, come here, would have his hammer, a sledgehammer, and he would come in, hit it, the front of the hand steel, and the man who's holding it would turn it a little bit by little bit every time he'd hit it with his hammer. And eventually, it would get far enough in the wall that he'd have 6 feet of space. And you can imagine some guy here, maybe even 2 sometimes, with a hammer, hitting this small spot at the end with my hand super close. A lot of the time, miners would have broken thumbs, broken wrists if the guy's really tired, broken fingers, that sort of thing. Because they didn't really have any safety regulations back in the early days, not until about 1919 when the unionization started. So yeah, that's how each hole would have been made. It takes about 30 minutes per hole, and there's 29 holes here, so altogether it's approximately 15 hours of work. And after the blasts occur, it moves back the mine about 6 feet.
So this here is the first of the drills that they would have gotten in this kind of mine. This is called the Widowmaker, also known as the Drifter. This is a very rudimentary drill. The first drills, not even mounted on here, it would have just been the drill itself, so you would have had a 2-man team. One guy would have to hold the thing up, and the other guy would actually operate it here at the end. At the end of the day, this is a very simple design. It's a big hunk of metal that you pump compressed air into, and then it shakes.
Yeah, it just vibrates in and out, in and out.
That's essentially it. So as it's doing that, as it's drilling into the rock, it's going to be taking all of that rock, turning it into dust, and the dust is just going to go right into the air, right into these guys' noses and lungs. Not so great for your health to be breathing in rock dust all day, especially in these mines, because in the rock here, there's a lot of arsenic. That's one of the big ones. Cobalt itself, asbestos. There's a lot of stuff that you should not be breathing in, especially day in, day out for your job. So that's why this thing was called the Widowmaker, because the miners working it, a lot of them would die very young from lung conditions, lung cancers, and other terrible things that were just killing them. That's,
No wonder it's called a Widowmaker.
yeah, that's why it's called the
great
widow.
guy.
It's the stale, harsh, sad truth is that this drill is just killing guys.
The vibrations were so strong, and the miners who used these drills used them for so long, that they developed something called white hand. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with that term, but it is a neurodegenerative condition. The vibrations in the hand kill the nerves in the hands, and your skin turns white. And while it isn't curable, it is, like I said, it's degenerative. So it would cause excruciating pain in your hands and numbness at times as well. So using these drills, I guess, over time got a little bit easier after you couldn't feel anything when you're, through your skin. But yeah, that was one huge problem with these drills in Cobalt. But over here, we have a much better drill. And in fact, we've had a couple of miners come down here and take the tour, and they say, hey, I recognize that drill. But they actually still use these today. This is a 1940s or 1950s model, so it's pretty old. But they really haven't really changed that much since then. So this is called the jackleg drill. Here's why it's called jackleg, because this is a jackleg right here. So what this guy would do is it would absorb some of the vibrations of the shock from the compressed air vibration from the drill. So it would just sort of go into the ground instead. And they would travel the bar here, they would hold onto the drill. And what they would have to do, each time they were going to drill a new hole, they would have to lift it up and then place it and then drill. And then after that it was easy peasy because the bit is like sitting on the inside of the wall. This guy was also powered by compressed air, as we said, and also it was always using water to eliminate that powder, like the aerosolized rock in the air. Obviously, there was still some, but it was far less than what it was before the addition of the water.
Call it the banjo.
Can you see why?
Because you can play it like a banjo. As you're shoveling all the rock, I'm sure you'd be making a lot of noise hitting those rocks. And so,
Yeah.
That's a Michael
with them
thing.
singing a lot, they would have work songs. We call it the banjo.
This is what they would do.
The miners working that shovel would be called banjo players. Just a kind of fun little colloquialism that they use to sort of make light of their working conditions, joke around a little bit, get a few smiles going. Because it's, at the end of the day, pretty back-breaking work, shoveling rocks all day. So,
Yeah.
pretty tough stuff. We've got another drill here. This is the plugger. It's kind of like a jackhammer, early version.
Yeah, very
You
early.
grab it, it's for when you want to drill down, whereas when you want to sink a shaft. Works the same way. You do a drift round, you stuff it full of dynamite and you blow it up and then you clean it up. So eventually that hole would start to get pretty deep and you don't want to just go down in a rope or a ladder. So eventually you would get to the point where you're getting lowered down into those holes, and you might be lowered down in a bucket like this one here. So these mines, they were not very standardized at all, like we have in mining today, where every mine would use the same kind of equipment. It was much more that every mine kind of did its own thing, that if it worked, great, and if it didn't work, then they would find something else. It differed very much from mine to mine what kind of equipment you would find when it comes to this sort of thing anyway. And so, getting lowered down into this, you would typically have one leg in and one leg out, like
As we
we're
have now.
showing now, and you would cram as many guys in as you can at once.
Sometimes
so maybe,
5 or more.
yeah, maybe 3, 4, maybe if they're real skinny, up to 5. And so you'd have one leg in, the other leg you'd have
Dangling out.
dangling out, probably holding the side of the thing.
Yeah.
You'd have an arm on the rope here, and then whatever equipment you have in your free hand.
And you
So
go
it's,
down.
Yep. And you'd be going down a probably 1,000, 2,000 foot hole like that. So you've got to be real careful not to tip this bucket, because if you tip this bucket, then everyone's going down that hole all the way to the bottom without any safety harnesses or anything. So I don't need to tell you what happens if you fall 1,000 feet and hit a bunch of rock.
Yeah.
At least I hope not. So
It's not like that now. In fact, this is a very early version of a bucket. We now use something called a cage. It's pretty much like an elevator, but meant for mines. You're in a cage. It's blocked off. There's no way that you're gonna fall out of anything or anything like that. Very safe. Mining obviously isn't that safe, but it's safe, much safer than it was back in the day. So, if there's any questions, guys, before we move on? No? Okay, so we're gonna head down this hall. Yeah, go ahead.
Is it adjustable or something? Oh,
Yeah, you can move back.
there you guys see if we can
It's
see.
not a very long hallway because it ends at the end there.
It does end there?
Yeah, it's not very long.
Okay, there's no turn or anything?
Not that I know. Not that I'm aware of, anyway. Most of the hallways around here are not very long. It's the ones in the lower levels that are longer.
Yeah.
This is here because that's the vein they were chasing right there.
Yeah, for sure. Let's check it. Fuck. There's no metal in that vein, man. Oh, see some pink. Still nothing.
Okay, so this is a really cool drill. It is called a diamond drill. It doesn't mine diamonds, unfortunately. It's too bad. But what it does do is it drills something called a drill core, which are these little guys here. You might have seen them at the museum. We have a big box of them. What these guys were used for is it was kind of like a in-mine prospecting drill, I guess I could say. So they would drill in a direction based on whether or not they found like indicator minerals like calcite or erythrite, and they would drill out a core like this. They would send it off to a lab, and they would let them know, like the manager of the mine would let them know if there's silver in the core, like what kind of grade, how much of it, is it rich, that sort of thing. And if it was good enough for the mine manager and for his investors, then they would mine in that direction. This particular drill, and also just diamond drills in general, we're not using this mine. This is donated from someone else. They've been using other mines in cobalt. But it was very, very useful tool in mining, and I would say it's probably still used today. Except it was used quite a lot for fraud. And what I mean by that is you could take a drill core and have it tested and say, okay, great, there's lots of silver in this is good, my mine is very rich. And then you can take it to another mine that you know is not profitable and say, hey, look, my drill core, there's so much silver in this. And the people will invest in your mine, and it turns out it's not profitable, and the investors lose all their money, but you gain. So, what the industry of mining decided to do is make a policy where you had to keep one half of the core in your mine and send the other half to a laboratory to test it so that they can match it together and know for sure that that is silver core from your mine and not any other mine that you have found somewhere else. So the reason why it's called a diamond drill is because at the end of the bit, there is a little bit of industrial diamond because it's the hardest known natural rock or mineral, and so it makes for a very, very smooth drill core, which is important when the laboratory staff are trying to figure out what the grade of the silver is. They have a ore car full, or a couple ore cars full. They would wheel it over to a concentrator, and we're lucky enough, in this mine specifically, to have a mill site just down the road from where we are. And also we're in an attic right now, which means it's surface level, so they can just push the car all the way there, out from the entrance of the mine. So they bring it to the concentrator, or mill, it's also called mill, and it would come in from here, so the ore car would come in from the top, and they would dump the car over, and all the rock would fall down into the bottom here, and it would land into these guys. And these are called jaw crushers. So it's another hydraulic machine. Air would power this machine. The wheels would turn, and it would move like these little iron slates up and down, and it would crush the rocks. So the point was to crush the rocks to as fine of a powder as they could. Second, it was sent over to this guy here, which is just another kind of crusher, and it would crush into a finer powder, and then finally to this big table called a Whiffley table. So what it does is it separates the heavier rocks, so the silver, because silver is quite dense, and the lesser dense rocks. It would vibrate, and the heavier stuff would fall off the front, and lighter stuff would fall off the side, and they would collect all of the heavy rock, and they would toss it into these huge vats full of chemicals, and then they would, the chemical reaction between silver and the other chemicals that were in the vat, it would cause the silver to precipitate to the top. They'd scoop it up, and they would melt it down into ingots. So that's how silver is concentrated, at least back in the day. And with the leftover chemicals, they would dump it into the various lakes around town.
Side chemicals or cyanide, that's what they use. Cyanide leaching.
This would have been absolutely full to the brim with rocks and minerals that they'd find be covered with these tracks, but we took them out obviously for the purpose of tours. Over here, we have what would have been used as an ore chute. So there are a couple of levels above us, and since this is the added level, they have to throw down the rocks from the top levels through the ore chute and into the ore cars so they can be then rolled out into the open air and to the mills. Now, the thing about these is that they weren't always that good at their job, and sometimes those scaling boys that we're talking about, they'd have to climb up into the ore chutes and sort of dislodge any rock that's causing issues. And sometimes that would mean that the boys would fall down.
Never done that before.
Just past here, there is the continuation of the mine. It's kind of hard to see because it's unfinished, but it goes back quite far. And there's also a shaft down there. You cannot see it from this flashlight, but yeah, it's all the way back down there. And also another reason why we have this fence here is because we have bats in this mine. They're not usually out during the summer, it's usually in the wintertime when they come out. But they are endangered, an endangered species of bats, so we try and keep them safe as much as possible. Hence the fence, and also it's dangerous to go back there. So we can just head out this way, guys, and we have 2 more spots.
This old cart too, it's riveted. 20s or earlier.
Alright. Back in the beginning of the Cobalt camp, they did not have electricity here, even though it was 1903 and most houses were run by electricity at that point in big cities. But of course, this was not a big city. And so in the mines, what they had to use were little candles, like these guys. If I can maybe not blow it out with my breath. So these little candles would have been stuck on to the front of their leather caps using these like big metal pins. And this would have been their only source of light. So miners around carrying it like this. And I have no idea how they did that, considering I blew it out in like a second. But if anyone objects, I don't have to turn off the lights. So, that is about how much light you would get from one miner's cap candle. So you can see why it's very important to have those indicators of silver, ones that aren't gray, right? So the kind of beige calcite and the pink from the cobalt would make it very, or not very easy, but a little easier to see where you were going and where you were mining. Except in the lower levels of the mine, there of course was less oxygen. And there were lots of miners in these hallways. So eventually you would run out of oxygen, and what do you need to make fire? You need fuel. So the lights would go out. And with the lights out, if you can imagine, this place would have been bustling, full of men chatting, blasts, really loud noises, cars moving everywhere. So what the miners had to do is they'd have to hug up against the wall, hoping that no one would come by and knock them to their feet. And if you guys wanted to try waving your hand in front of your face, you can't see it, can you? Because there's no natural lighting here at all. There's nothing at all. Light. So, right now we are illuminated by this sort of light, the light that we all love and we all know, electricity. Love it. Before then, they used the carbide lamp. So this would have been introduced probably in the late teens, although these were actually invented in 1901. They just weren't as common, and they're also a lot more expensive, much more expensive than a typical candle. So how this works is a little bit of calcium carbide would have been placed in the bottom here, a little bit of water, it would have been heated on a stove, and from there the gas would be captured into this chamber here, and that gas was acetylene.
Took the lights off on them. Alright guys, so hope you enjoyed the tour. I'd highly recommend it for anyone. Even these young guys that did our tour did a really great job for the first one they did of the year especially. So yeah, share the video around, go and check it out. It's totally worth it. I didn't really learn anything because I already know this stuff, but if you don't know mining stuff, you're going to learn a lot. So check it out. Blair, thanks for bringing me, man. And let's go find some silver.
Sounds good.
Thanks for watching, guys. Until next time. Bye for now.